Let's talk about what is the update that's actually happening.
Yeah, so iOS 14.5 arrives this week. And with many of the updates coming out with that, there's going to be an app tracking transparency pop-up, which is a feature that was supposed to roll out with iOS 14 earlier this year, but they decided to delay that until now. And it's going to provide users with an opt-in prompt on each app that will allow them to choose whether or not they want to consent to third-party sites like Facebook or Google to target ads.
And I think the iOS update, it has some really cool features. So there was some really cool things that they're adding in terms of being able to unlock your phone with a face mask if you have an Apple Watch, using Siri for non-Apple apps, which was kind of like a thing they've been under scrutiny for. But ultimately, there's a lot of impacts here with the IDFA, or the identifier for advertisers, that's tied to every Apple device. And this really gives the ability for individual apps to track your behavior or your patterns or anything you do. So let's say you look at a product in one shopping app, like I looked at swimsuits in something here, and another app is also part of that same ad network, essentially, for simple terms here. And that allows for ads to show up. So it's interesting because I think here most platforms, and let's just list out some of the top ones, but these DSPs and MMPs and DMPs and all of the alphabet soup of the ad tech like industry in its whole, use this to be able to identify who you are as you browse the internet. One of the things that I looked at too is just on the larger impact. This is from Statista, which, I love Statista for all of its visualizations. But you can see, like, we're really talking about 50% of the smartphone market.
Right. I mean, possibly even
So
more.
it could be more. And this is just US. This is through you. I mean, you see here, even for Android was the primary up until May of 2020. And even then, it's kind of bounced around back and forth. So, knowing that, what are the implications? What are the effects that we should expect to see from our campaigns when it comes to social?
It's hard to say right now because we don't really know how long it's going to take for iOS 14.5 to roll out. There's lots of resources out there that say that the rollout can take 3 to 6 months. So we might not see significant impacts until September of this year. Also, we could see up to like a 50% drop in audience network advertising on Facebook, just due to people opting out of tracking. I'm curious if people will opt out of tracking on Facebook, just given Facebook's whole role in the data and privacy issues that have been happening over the past couple of years. People might see Facebook as a platform where their information is not safe. And so Facebook might be one of the first apps that they opt out of. So it'll be interesting to see how this is going to affect advertising, but I don't think we'll see the effects right away. Like I said, it could be 3 to 6 months. So maybe early fall later this year.
And I think that's such a great point to use, because Apple historically has not been able to, like, no provider has been able to just roll out everything all at one time. In my house, we have 3 iPads and 2 iPhones, and not a single one has been prompted to make that update. I still go to my phone now, and even this morning looked at it again. The update is not available for me. There have been stories here in some of these articles that I've been reading about that people have done the update, but have had no apps ask whether they have had this prompt come up in the thousands of apps that they have on their phones. So the interesting thing I think CNET points out here is not every developer is going to be ready, even though we know it was coming. We've known forever that it was coming. It was supposed to roll out last September.
The
I find this to
anticipation
be
is
very
killing us.
right. And I think the other thing to point out too that you mentioned is this impacts iPhone, iPad users. So you have a Google Pixel, so it doesn't impact you. Nothing
Mhm.
changes for you. Um, I'm on my MacBook. You are on a MacBook. It does not impact my browsing history there. Um, so it's interesting because there are a lot of unknowns that it is a big deal. I don't want to diminish that part of it, but the implications are still so unclear at this point because it only takes into account iPhone, iPad users,
Mhm.
which, like we just looked at, accounts for about 50% of the smartphone market, but doesn't take into account at all anything having to do with how you use a computer or another tablet, your Pixel. You know, we have several people in our organization that don't have an iPhone. Um, so I think it's really interesting. It will be curious to say the least. It also doesn't impact how you use Facebook. So I can still use Facebook on my phone, and Facebook will still get the pages that I follow, the content that I read, the links that I click on, the anything. If anything, the cookie situation, which is a whole other conversation, but the cookie situation has more of an impact for Facebook than I think the iOS update.
Mhm. And for Facebook advertisers, there are ways that people can still try to reach their audience by using those custom audiences off of like people who engage on their social media pages. So there is still
Sure.
a way to reach those people who engage with content on their Facebook, Instagram page. If they watch a video, they could capture an audience from that. Anybody who likes their page, they could pull and create an audience from that. So there is still a way that Facebook can try to reach their audience aside from this update.
Yeah, that's great. That's such good information. So what do we do?
Well, it's a big question mark. Wait
It's
and see.
my loaded question for the day. Yeah, I mean,
Um,
really, that's all we can do, right?
yeah. One of the things you can do, and what Facebook's recommending right now, is that we verify a lot of our domains. Um, Facebook and the new update require that you do this so you can advertise. So any conversion-based campaigns that we're running, we'll need to verify the domain by placing a small code in our Google Tag Manager to verify those domains. So that
Very
we can
similar
fly
process to how you'd verify your website in a Google Search Console
with. Mhm.
for SEO tracking, for instance. Pretty similar there. So and you mentioned the conversion campaign too, which I think is an important qualification to consider. So if you're running like a lead campaign or your objective is identified primarily off of conversions, whether those are sales or leads or something, that's kind of the piece there. You know, some of your reach and traffic campaigns may benefit from this domain verification as well. But it certainly is probably not being pushed as much of a requirement right now. Um,
Right. I think
the
it's
wait and
effective.
see,
Go ahead.
the
You're
wait
good.
and see is like the hardest part because you know we just want to know.
Yes.
Um, so yeah.
I think the thing it's going to affect the most, and there's that it's been said everywhere, is the fact that it's going to affect a lot of app install campaigns. So there's
Hmm.
definitely more work to be done for those types of campaigns, which we
Yeah,
aren't running any of those campaign objectives right now, but it's
sure.
good to know for if we do in the future what steps we need
Yeah.
to take. But we'll send updates out as the more people start to opt in or out, and send out
Hmm.
resources to the team about what further actions we need to take, so our clients aren't super affected by this.
Yep.